Hi, my friends. I'm back for chapter 5 of Mrs. Pigglewiggle, The Radish Cure. Sorry, it's been a few days. It's been kind of crazy over here. All right, ready? Up to the time of this story, Patsy was just an everyday girl. Sometimes she was good and sometimes she was naughty, but usually she did what her mother told her without too much fuss. But one morning, Patsy's mother filled the bathtub with nice warm water and called to Patsy to come and take her bath. Patsy came into the bathroom, but when she saw the nice warm tub of water, she began to scream and yell and kick and howl like a wild animal. This happened with Sosie the other day, too. Almost exactly like that. Naturally, her mother was quite surprised to see her little girl acting so peculiarly, but she didn't say anything. She just took off Patsy's bathrobe and said, "Now, Patsy, stop all this nonsense and hop into the tub." Patsy gave a piercing shriek and ran from the bathroom, stark naked and yelling, "I won't take a bath! I won't ever take a bath! I hate baths! I hate baths! I hate baths!" Patsy's mother let the water out of the tub and went downstairs to telephone her friends and find out if their children had ever behaved in this unusual fashion, if it was catching, and what to do about it. First, she called Mrs. Brown. She said, "Hello, Mrs. Brown. This is Patsy's mother, and I'm having such a time this morning. Patsy simply will not take a bath. Pardon me just a minute, Mrs. Brown." She put the telephone receiver down and went over to Patsy, who was standing in the kitchen doorway listening to the telephone conversation and feeling very important. Patsy said, "What did Mrs. Brown say to do with me, Mother?" Patsy's mother said, "She hasn't told me yet, but while I'm finding out, you had better march right upstairs and get dressed, and then you can pick up that messy, sticky, pasting work you left all over your room last night. Don't come downstairs until every single thing is put away." Patsy's mother picked up the telephone, and Mrs. Brown said, "I'm sorry, but I can't offer any suggestions, because our little Prunella just adores to bathe. Perhaps Mrs. Grotto could help you." So Patsy's mother called Mrs. Grotto. She said, "Hello, Mrs. Grotto. I just called to ask if you could help me with Patsy. She won't take a bath and I'm at my wit's end." Mrs. Grotto said, "Well, frankly, I don't know what to suggest, because our little Paraphernalia simply worships her bath. Of course, Paraphernalia is quite a remarkable child anyways. Why, Thursday afternoon, she—" Yes, I know," said Patsy's mother quickly. "Goodbye, Mrs. Grotto. Thank you anyways." Then Patsy's mother called Mrs. Broomrack. "Good morning, Mrs. Broomrack," she said, a little too brightly. "I wonder if you could do me a favor?" "Why, of course, dear," said Mrs. Broomrack. "Well," said Patsy's mother, "this morning, for the first time in her life, our little Patsy won't take a bath. The very idea seems to make her hysterical, and I don't know what to do." Mrs. Broomrack said, "Oh, why, you poor dear, all alone in that big house with that unmanageable child. Personally, I don't know what to say, because our little cormorant loves to take a bath. Bathing is his favorite pastime. In fact, sometimes we can't get him out of the tub." "Well, then why don't you just let him stay in, then?" said Patsy's mother. "But because he might drown," squeals Mrs. Broomrack. Here's a picture. All those kids bathing, but whoop, I can't get it. There it is. Beep. But not Patsy. "Well," said Patsy's mother, as she hung up the phone. By this time, she was feeling rather depressed about it, because it seemed that bathing was the most popular indoor sport with every child in town but her own dirty little girl. In desperation, she decided to call Mrs. Pigglewiggle. She should know about children, thought Patsy's mother. She certainly has her house crawling with them day and night. It certainly was fortunate for Patsy's mother that she thought of Mrs. Pigglewiggle, because although Mrs. Pigglewiggle has no children of her own and lives in an upside-down house, she understands children better than anybody in the whole world. She's always ready to stop whatever she's doing and have a tea party. She's glad to have children dig worms in her petunia bed. She has a large trunk full of scraps for doll clothes and another trunk full of valuable rocks with gold in them. She's delighted to have children pick up and look at all the little things which she keeps on her tables. And when Hubert Prentice drops the glass ball that snowed on the children when you shook it, she said, "Heavens, Hubert, don't cry. I'm so glad this happened. For years and years I've wanted to know what was in that glass ball." Mrs. Pigglewiggle takes it for granted that you will want to try on her shoes and go wiggling around in high heels, which is probably why she was not at all surprised when Patsy's mother told her about the bath. I suppose we all come to it sooner or later, she said. Well, from my experience, I would say that the radish cure is probably the quickest and most lasting. The radish cure? Asked Patsy's mother. Yes, said Mrs. Pigglewiggle, the radish cure. It's just what Patsy needs. All you have to do is buy one package of radish seeds. The small red round ones are the best. And don't get that long white icicle type. Then let Patsy strictly alone as far as washing is concerned for several weeks. When she has about half an inch of rich black dirt all over her, and after she's asleep at night, scatter radish seeds on her arm and head. Press them in gently and then just wait. I don't think you'll have to water them, because we're in a rainy season now, and she probably will go outdoors now and then. And when the little radish plants have 3 leaves, you may begin pulling the largest ones. Oh yes, Patsy will probably look quite horrible before the radish cure is over. So, if you find that she's scaring too many people or her father objects to having her around, let me know and I will be glad to take over from here. You see, all of my visitors are children, and dirt doesn't frighten them. Patsy's mother thanked Mrs. Pigglewiggle very, very much for her kind advice, and then called up Patsy's father. She told him to be sure and bring home a package of radish seeds. Early red globes, she thought they were called. The next morning, she didn't say one single word to Patsy about a bath, and so Patsy was sweet and didn't act like a wild animal. The next day was the same, and so was the next, and the next. And when Sunday came, Patsy was a rather dark blackish-gray color, so her mother suggested that they stay home from Sunday school. Patsy's father, who by this time had been told of the radish cure, didn't say anything to Patsy about washing, but he winced whenever he looked at her. By the end of the 3rd week, they had to keep Patsy indoors all the time, because one morning she skipped out to get the mail, and the postman, on seeing her straggly, uncombed, dust-caked hair, and the rapid-forming layer of topsoil on her face, neck and arms, gave a terrified yell and fell down the front steps. Patsy seemed quite happy, though. Of course, it was getting hard to tell how she felt, as her face was so caked with dirt she couldn't smile, and she talked like this. I am Patsy, and I don't take a bath. She also had to take little teeny bites of food because she couldn't open her mouth more than a crack. Naturally, her father and mother had to stop having any friends to visit, except in the evening when Patsy was in bed. And even then, they weren't that comfortable for fear Patsy would wake up and call, "Ingy gaka gaka, Daddy!" Really, bring me a drink of water, Daddy. At last, however, the day came when Patsy was ready to plant. That night, when she was asleep, her mother and father tiptoed into her room and very gently pressed radish seeds into her forehead, her arms, and the back of her hands. And when they had finished, they were standing by her bed, gazing fondly at their handiwork. Patsy's father said, "Repulsive little thing, isn't she?" Patsy's mother said, "Why, George, that's a terrible thing to say of your own child." "My little girl's buried so deep in dirt that I can't even remember what she looks like," said Patsy's father, and he stomped down the stairs. The radish cure is certainly hard on the parents. Quite a few days after that, Patsy awoke one morning, and there on the back of her hand, in fact on the backs of both of her hands and her arms and on her forehead, were green leaves. Patsy tried to brush them off, but they just bent over and sprang right back up again. She jumped out of bed and ran down the stairs to the dining room, where her mother and father were eating breakfast. She squeaked. Her father said, "Behold the bloom of youth," and her mother said, "George," then jumped up briskly, went over to Patsy, and took a firm hold of one of her plants on her forehead and gave it a quick jerk. Patsy squealed, and her mother showed her the little red radish she had pulled. Patsy tried to pull one out of her arm, but her hands were so caked with dirt that they couldn't grasp the little leaves, so her mother had to pull them. When Patsy had finished one hand and part of the left arm, she suddenly said, "Other eye and ass." "What did you say?" she asked her mother, busily pulling the radishes and putting them in neat little piles on the dining room table. "Oh, said Patsy, so plainly that it cracked the mud on her left cheek. Patsy's mother said, "I think it better be a shower." And without another word, she went in and turned on the warm water. Patsy was in the shower that whole day. She used up 2 whole bars of soap, and she didn't even come out for lunch. But when her father came home for dinner, there she was, waiting for him at the door, clean, sweet, and smiling, and in her hand she had a plate of little red radishes. The end.